Trojans don't cover, but they do score 40 points for the, what is it, the like fifth time, and I probably should have looked that up before I just threw it out there.
For the multiple time in games.
Yeah, exactly. USC is now 7-1 in their first 8 games of the season. The Trojans now enter November in which they will be home for the remainder of the season. The Arizona game, the last road game, the last time USC will wear white. The only other game on the schedule, not at the Coliseum, of course, at USC's other home, November 19th at the Rose Bowl. But let's talk about this one. It was a wild game in Tucson, one in which the first half went back and forth. The right before halftime, one of the craziest calls you'll ever see. A third quarter that looked like SC was going to blow this game wide open and run away with it, followed by about a 3-minute stretch in which Arizona completely turned the game on its head, nearly tied the game, followed by a fourth quarter in which SC regained control and ultimately finishes it off with an 8-point win. Welcome to the chat, as always. If you're joining us here live on YouTube, throw your comments in the chat. Have your say. We want to know what you guys think about USC's win over the Arizona Wildcats. Be sure to vote in our poll that we've put up there over on YouTube as well, asking you guys to grade USC's performance against Arizona as well. But Alicia, let's go to you. Tell me your thoughts, your first initial thoughts about SC's win over the Wildcats.
Yes, SC's 45-37 win over the Wildcats. We are aware, chat.
I'll fix the bug.
Yeah. What a strange game. I find myself thinking of what I watched on Thursday when I was watching Utah take on Washington State, and looking at that game and thinking, man, Utah's just going to be lucky to get out of this game with a win, given all of the injuries they were dealing with, given just the weird way that game went down for them. And they did come out with a win, and I did give them a lot of credit for that. And in a column that I wrote for fansided.com today, I said they were the most impressive team of the week, because without Cam Rising, without Tavion Thomas, without Micah Bernard, without Dalton Kincaid, without so-and-so, they managed to still get a win. And so it's not quite the same. It doesn't quite go 1-for-1, because I think that the USC was facing a weaker team, but they were on the road. USC was facing the personnel issues that they were facing were not quite as drastic as what Utah dealt with. USC didn't have to win this game without Caleb Williams, for instance. But there are some parallels there when you look at a team being on the road, missing starters and contributors and the guys who would have started in place of the starters, and being able to get a win. And I think that this was exactly the game that I wanted from USC's offense, in the sense that they needed to bail out their defense, and they did that. And there was a sense that I had that was very much like, okay, even though Arizona managed to pull within the within a score of USC, it never felt like USC was not going to score themselves going back the other way. And that's without Jordan Addison, without Mario Williams, and with, digging deep into seeing a ton of playing time from guys like Michael Jackson III, from Kyle Ford, from Taj Washington, from Brendan Rice, from all those guys. Saw a lot of Terrell Bynum in this game, saw a lot of CJ Williams and all those guys. So they were really digging deep into this offense, and the offense came through with exactly the performance you'd want. Caleb Williams is beyond. I don't think we could spend enough time on this podcast talking about how great Caleb Williams is and do him justice. Like, we could do 5 hours and still not do justice to how good Caleb Williams is. But I think the offense overall, what we saw from the offense is proof positive of what this offense can do in a game when things aren't going well for the defense. The defense is a problem. Especially when Eric Gentry's not on the field. They even missed Raylan Goforth today. They missed someone like Corey Foreman coming in and having an impact. The defense was a problem. I thought that the Tuasiva Nomura is the lone linebacker. Shane Lee is the lone linebacker. Neither of those looks worked. The defense was basically gasping for air the entire time. That's a problem. And that's going to be a problem in future matchups. But on the plus side, this defense got out of this. They got the stops that they needed to win the game. And they did so without a bunch of key starters. And hopefully those starters will be back in time so that the Colorado and Cal games, which do not pose the same kind of threat that Arizona poses, won't be quite as much of a slog as this. But there's something to be said for winning on the road when you're missing a bunch of guys, and it's not pretty, but you get the job done. So I'm content.
Yeah, at one point in the third quarter, I put out on Twitter, I was tempting fate by putting out on Twitter that, all things considered, this is a performance that you have to feel really good about, considering all the injuries. SC looked flawless on offense. The passing game was incredible. Caleb Williams, just absurd. It is absurd how clean he plays with the, how many times he gets out of the pocket, how many times he scrambles around. You're due to make a dumb decision. You're due to make a bad pass.
Force a ball.
Force something, and he doesn't do that. It's wild to me that, even when we talked about the stuff that he was doing against ASU that we thought was a little risky, he did literally none of that tonight. Everything he did, he was in complete control of. The touchdown pass that he threw to Brendan Rice in the second quarter, insane. Just the way he slows it down, just fires that missile, insane. He almost threw another one to Rice the same way. Just everything about the passing game, I thought was A+, especially when you're down your top two receivers. Brendan Rice was also out for part of this game. Ultimately, came back and he had 5 catches tonight. But the offense, I thought, was everything you wanted and more. Especially given all the injuries, you take that a million days over, absolutely. And on defense, for the first, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes, I would have said that the defense was performing just fine. Yes, Arizona scored 10 points in that first quarter, but after that, they hold them to 3 in the second. The beginning of the third quarter is nothing but Jaden DeLara running and scrambling for his life. And at that point in the game, I thought, this isn't a terrible thing. If you're trading DeLara having to run to beat you versus having to throw when he's got all those weapons at wide receiver, you take that trade. You take being able to bottle up the receivers, flushing him out of the pocket, and forcing him to run. You take that trade. Fine. And it was working. And then all of a sudden, towards the middle to the end of the third quarter and going into the fourth quarter, he started to find those receivers with regularity, and the passing game really came down to being successful for Arizona. That's what brought them back into the game. So the defense, yes, a problem because we didn't see the second half continue to go SC's favor. I thought it certainly could have, but it didn't. This was really the first time. I would say that the Utah game too. I mean, the Utah game just never changed, but this was the first time I think the defense got worse as the game has gone on. Would you say that? Is that fair?
Maybe to a point. I also think that, that might have been possibly a reflection of some of the catches these dudes were making were just really. This is one of the things
that's part of it, but that's not the whole picture.
No, that's not the whole picture. But you also we talk about this at times. You have to give credit to the other team, and I came away very impressed with Jaden DeLara. I came away extremely impressed with the receiving core over at Arizona. Those guys were making plays. And USC's defense could have done more to stop them. But USC's defense, the way that they were playing against this Arizona team, against a team with lesser receiving talents, probably isn't able to make those kinds of plays. And I want to give them a lot of credit for that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the defense started to look a little bit demoralized later in the game. And I think that might lead to the perception that maybe they got worse, which this defense needs to be playing with some swagger and confidence to be able to force the turnovers and havoc plays that they forced. And they just weren't having success in any of those ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just looked like the energy or the swagger or the belief was low.
Yeah, and I thought it was there, or in the middle quarters, but definitely as it got closer to the end of that third quarter, things just completely went downhill. Defensively, Arizona comes back and almost they were in position to potentially steal the game if something went weird on offense. But like we talked about it in the pregame pod, I said that Arizona's going to have to win a shootout, but that SC's offense is probably too good for Arizona's defense because Arizona's defense is that historically bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what happened, right? Because if Arizona could get a stop outside of that 3-and-out that happened there towards the late of the third quarter, which allows Arizona to come back and try to tie the game on that 2-point conversion. Outside of that, Arizona just couldn't make a stop to save their life. SC was just that good on offense. But the only time they were getting stops was missed field goals. There was 2 of them by Lynch tonight. And then that play.
Before
the half.
Yeah.
I don't what you remember, was it 10 years ago? Wisconsin went on the road into Tempe, and the final moments was trying to clock the ball.
Yeah.
And the ref prevented the guy from clocking it, and it was a big deal, and it was an embarrassing moment for the Pac-12 because how the game ended. ASU ends up winning the game. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's just
10 years ago.
What happened tonight, before the half, worse than that. Egregiously worse than that. It's incredible that ultimately ends up not mattering. It's a good thing for SC. It's a good thing for the conference. Maybe not a good thing for the conference because it's easy for everyone to forget about it. I know that the chat has been going off about the egregiousness of the officials. Michael Mothershed, people putting fire Michael Mothershed in the YouTube chat. Insane what happened with the refereeing. But to go back to my point, SC's offense was just too good tonight that Arizona was going to have to make a play on defense, and they couldn't do that to save their life. And that's what ultimately gets SC through to win the game, because SC got an interception in this game. And Arizona didn't. That was the difference. SC forced the turnover. Arizona did not. Another game, 7 out of 8 games in which the Trojans have not turned over the ball. I mentioned a poll we put over here on YouTube. If you're watching us live on YouTube, how would you grade USC's performance tonight? 48% say B. 46% say C. There's no D option, by the way, because YouTube only allows 4 options for a poll. So it's A, B, C, or F, which probably fair because a D is basically failing anyways. But 0% with the F. I'm surprised. Usually, there's some outlier, right? No. 5% said A. Where would you put SC on that scale?
Yeah, I think B or C is probably right. B, if you want to give them credit for fighting through in tough circumstances with all the injuries and being on the road and just the way that Arizona was making plays.
Yeah.
C, if you want to hold them to a higher standard, which I think is fair to do, depending on your outlook for the season. And I think that's one of the things that sort of makes this such a weird game to evaluate. Like, if I put on my preseason Alicia cap, that or the side of me that doesn't want to see USC in the playoff because I don't think they're ready for that yet, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with USC not being ready to, say, win the Pac-12 yet in year 1 under Lincoln Riley. If I put that hat on, I come into this game thinking this is way more close to what I expected every game to be for USC this year. This was way more Big 12 bad sort of scenario that I expected in the first half of the season, and we didn't really get. And that so in that sense, like I said, I'm content. If I take off that hat and put on the hat that's legitimately making an argument for USC to be a playoff contender, to be a contender for the Pac-12 title, to want to step on the field against everyone they play and have a chance to win, this was not this was a C at best. Like, this was just not a good enough performance, certainly from the defense. The offense, if you want to get really nitpicky, settling for field goals a couple times, I don't feel like being nitpicky about that. Even that 1 3 and out, like, if you have one of those a game, but then score on all your other drives, like, that's, I'm not going to complain. This game is very much about the defense being out of their depth.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's reasons for why they're out of their depth.
Sure.
And a lot of those are out of their control.
Before that, the depth just isn't there on defense yet, right? And so once you end up losing a key guy or two, and especially at linebacker, and we've talked about it before, the linebackers are the weak link of this defense. And it doesn't help that your best linebacker goes down. And suddenly you've got Shane Lee, who we know has been vulnerable in pass coverage. He has to go up against the number 5 pass team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great matchup. And then you throw out there Tucson Nomura, who he's not used to getting starting reps on this defense yet. And I think he's still a developing player, and you want to see more out of him and see him continue to grow. But that's a tough spot to put him out there in. Especially
when the defense was very clearly, to me, schemed around the injuries. What was the game year? It was years ago that USC had to do this, where they went to the dime defense because they didn't have any linebackers. I don't remember when it was, but I do remember specifically that USC basically went out and with just like 3 linemen and a linebacker, and everybody else was a DB. And it was specifically schemed because of the injuries. This felt a lot like that. And maybe it lent itself to playing Arizona, that they were comfortable going with that. But like, you can't tell me that if Eric Gentry and Raylan Goforth were healthy, that USC would have come out in that dime defense as their base. I just don't think that's what it would have been. So when has USC even run that defense? Like, CV Nomura is thrown into a defense that USC has not run at any other point this season.
The difference, though, is I don't know how different it is, considering this is a team that we've talked about before who Arizona does one thing in an elite level and nothing else at an elite level, and that's passing the football. And so I don't know that, going back and sitting back in that nickel and dime and moving back and forth between those sets and trying to throw out different numbers is necessarily something that they wouldn't have done otherwise. It just puts even more burden on guys like Shane Lee, for sure. I don't know that Shane Lee was specifically the problem in this game. It was just a mixture of coverages in general.
He actually had good coverage on one play that was a catch. And again, it was like, he made that catch. Like, I thought that was good coverage there. But
Dorian Singer made a ton of like crazy catches.
Yeah.
But like, I keep going back to, it was, it sort of reminded me of, and I don't want to bring this up, I know it's a touchy moment, but a game that happened January 4th, 2006, in which SC kept sending rushers by the name of TING off of one end to force a quarterback by the name of YOUNG in one direction. That kind of is what happened in this game, with the exception of, if Delare is going to run, just you take that, but that's what sort of happened in the middle quarters, right? Where, it was just everyone dropping back, forcing him into those runs. And then when that didn't happen and he was able to just, ultimately sling it, things changed a little bit. We saw Bryson Shaw get some action in this game. He made a couple big plays. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do later on. In this defense, he comes over from Ohio State. We talked about it in the preview pod that His dad put out on Twitter that he had a quad tear in camp before the season started. And so now that he's healthy, that adds another wrinkle to the safeties. But
it would help more if he was a linebacker. That's the
sure,
problem, right?
Sure. This is where you need. We talked about before. This is where you need Talanoa Hufanga, a guy who's going to be like, you need a linebacker, then I'll be a linebacker on this play.
Was that the defense? Was that when they had Talanoa as the linebacker? It might have been. That rang a bell for me. But either way, like, we came into this season saying that the defense was going to be limited, and we were impressed by the job that they did early in the season and the fight that they had early in the season. And it feels like the last 2 weeks, it feels like some of their luck has run out. They're still forcing a turnover in each of these games, but they're not forcing 2 or 3 the way that they were. And it feels like the injuries have taken the toll on them significantly more than they've taken the toll on the offense. And I think that was predictable. The offense, the
offense has more depth.
The offense has more depth. And if you had told me which positions would you rather see a slew of injuries at, I could have said that USC would survive the wide receiver injuries more than they would survive the linebacker injuries, but that's where all the injuries have been. I guess what's disappointing about this game is that given all those injuries, I think there was hope from the fan base that maybe this would be the game where we see Rajon Davis, maybe Chris Thompson gets in, maybe we just see somebody new. And we clearly didn't. That tells us that those guys, as much talk as there is that they might be ready, the coaches don't think they're ready.
Well, the new guy was CV, and it's not like he's a new player. But
and we've seen Tua CV
right,
for weeks now.
In terms of the workload that he got, that was the new angle of it. Not that he's a new face or anything like that.
No, but I think the point is that the depth on this defense was limited going into the season. Yeah. There is no help coming. In fact, they've just gotten shorter on help because of the way that the injuries have fallen. And so I think you just have to take your lumps when it comes to this defense. I have seen people talk about, fire Alex Grinch and all this kind of stuff. Still too premature for me. Like, I don't know what I don't know what a defensive coordinator is really going to achieve when they're taking over a defense that was as bad as USC's was, that had less reinforcements arrive the way that as the offense did. It's a tough spot for Grinch. I won't judge him in year 1. Year 2 we can start to judge. Year 3 we can definitely judge. But this game really highlights, I think Utah and other games in the past have highlighted, but this game really, really highlights that USC is going to have a really tough time unless they really work the transfer portal and get some more instant contributors, so that when the instant contributor that they got from the transfer portal goes down injured, there's somebody else there to pick up the slack, because that's what we're seeing is. And I don't want to say that the defense would have been great if Eric Gentry had been in there, but we've seen this defense be better when Eric Gentry is in there. It's certainly harder to pass on this defense when he's in there, just given his size.
Yeah.
So
I want to see what it would have changed with some of the Delara runs too. Like, does that take away some of the longer ones? Does it limit the 12-yard ones to maybe a 9-yard gain? I don't know.
Or is there a tip that results in a turnover? Or does Delara have more hesitancy trying to pass over the middle, or any of those kinds of things? I think it's just tough. But the tightrope that USC was walking on defense this is sort of the fall that was almost bound to come if the injuries were going to be like this. But I hope that USC takes this as a sign, like they really, really, really need reinforcements at a handful of positions. I mean, in this game kind of highlighted too that USC's pass rush, while they can be effective, the right quarterback can make them completely ineffective. And Cam Rising did this, and Jaden Delara has now done this. If you don't think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to do this, then
this is the thing that I was thinking is, I think in a lot of ways that this SC offense the last 2 weeks has been insanely impressive, right? Yeah. And I feel more confident in this SC offense than I ever have before. This is the most confidence I've had in a USC offense dating back to 2005.
Yeah.
They look virtually unstoppable at this point. They're peaking on all cylinders. They've done it on the road 2 games in a row where it's amazing they haven't scored 50 in each game. Like they look like a 100-point offense at this point, right?
Yes.
Having said that, after this game, do I have more confidence in SC beating UCLA? No. Because if the defense shows up tonight the way that they did, DTR, especially the last 20 minutes of the game, the way the defense played, DTR and UCLA are scoring 50 again, and you're gonna have to score 60 yourself to beat them, which I think that SC is capable of doing that, sure, but having to do that versus actually doing that on your own are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And then you add in Oregon. Am I more confident in USC's chances of beating Oregon? No, because of the defense. And there was I forget who said it in the chat that if SC makes the playoff, it's gonna be a redo of the LSU Oklahoma game from a few years ago. 2 things. One, yes, that's probably right. Yeah, because SC
I would take that right now if you gave me that right now for the record.
That's probably right. Number 2, though, if that happens in year 1, and I keep going back to this too, like I have, because of the way the defense played tonight, I have less confidence in USC's ability to win the conference, given how UCLA and Oregon look like offensive juggernauts. And that's a scary matchup for the Trojans in that sense. Having said that, I got to go back to it's year 1. It's year 1 in a completely new system on offense and defense. One in which SC had to go to the transfer portal to fill holes, and that was never going to be an infallible way to do it on either side of the ball. It certainly helped on offense considerably more. And at that point, you look at it, and it's like SC at 7-1. And there was a question that we got here on YouTube from, where is it? From Dave the Greater. What would our record be if we still have Slovis at quarterback? Okay, if SC still had Slovis and Graham Harrell, the combination of Graham Harrell and Keaton Slovis, tonight is a loss.
Oregon State.
Utah. We'll just go backwards. Utah is a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Washington State, they pull that one out. ASU, they pull that one out. Oregon State is a loss. Fresno State's a win. Stanford is a loss. Rice is a win, and they're 4-4. Right? Like, like the difference in this offense, being guided by Caleb Williams, who is doing it to near perfection. Again, only 1 interception in the entire season. SC has turned over the ball 1 time in 8 games. How insane is that?
It's genuinely incredible.
In like you couldn't write that. Like it. I turnover luck exists because this isn't possible usually.
Yeah.
And yeah, SC has been nearly perfect on offense in a lot of different aspects, and that's the difference. And to do that in year 1 is insane. SC is in a great spot. They're number 10 in the country. Going to be probably at least number 9 tomorrow morning, considering that Oklahoma State is going to tumble out of the polls, or at least tumble out of the top 10. Yeah, SC is in a good spot, albeit a weird one with the defense. The last two games, but of course, the next couple of weeks, Cal and Colorado both coming to the Coliseum. 2 games in which SC will be favored by double digits. The Colorado game, who knows? Maybe SC will be favored by triple digits. Leading into the UCLA game, which if SC can hold serve the next 2 weeks, that's going to be the one. And your hope is that on defense, Eric Gentry is back and changes things on defense, and SC can, give up 30 points to UCLA instead of 60 points, and hope that you score more, or you hope that you get Jordan Addison back and Mario Williams back, and you score even more points or whatever on offense against UCLA.
That's the hope, but the problem is that we don't know what the timeline for Eric Gentry really is. We don't know what he'll be like when he gets back, and we don't know if maybe the dam has just burst on this defense. It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
But that's what we got to find out, right? And this is where we're going to see, does Alex Grinch have the ability to adjust, to change things around? Does Lincoln Riley have the ability to adjust and change things around? There was a question from Ryan in the chat. Do you think USC's refusal to lean on the run when the defense is rushing 3 will end up hurting us? And I think that there is certainly an argument that USC could lean on the run a lot more than they currently do. But I think you and I had this sort of debate / conversation last time around. And it was sort of like, well, can you really fault the offense when they're putting up 441 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. But it would be interesting if Alex Grinch and company figure out that, like, there's nothing we can do here to stop the bleeding, if USC maybe adjusts what they do on offense and play more ball control and see if they can limit possessions on the other side, because that might be the way that you deal with something like, UCLA. If you're worried that, that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to put up 60, 70 points on you, well, maybe you do take a page out of Stanford, old school Stanford's book and limit those possessions. But that's what the last month of the season is so interesting for, is we get to see where the coaching staff is going to try and put a stamp on something that is going to be very limited for what they're going to be putting a stamp on, because they only have the players that they have, and they have limited coaching time with them, and all of those elements that are going into it. So I'm really curious. The next 2 weeks are a lot easier than this game, but the last 2 weeks are the most meaningful. And if you don't take care of your business in the next 2 weeks, then those last two weeks are going to be pointless. Or at least these next 2 weeks will have been pointless if you can't go ahead and do something against Notre Dame and UCLA.
To go on the offensive thing about, we got a question from Marcelo too. Why do they choose not to run? I have a hard time with the not running thing. Like, we talked about it in the preview. Arizona's rush defense is historically bad. And yes, that should be reason to just run the ball on every down. And I agree in run the ball and do all of that. But I just have a hard time pointing it out when in the third quarter alone, the wide receivers in 6 plays gained 186 yards. I say wide receivers because that includes a 53-yard reverse. I'm not going to include a 53-yard reverse in the run game. You know what I mean? Not exactly a handoff from Caleb Williams to any of the running backs, but 103 yards passing in that third quarter on 5 catches. That's how explosive the passing game was. The offense in general tonight, 611 yards. I don't think that we can, sit here and say that they're not running the ball enough, or that the lack of running is costing them anything. They had 1 3-and-out, and that 1 3-and-out included a third down play in which Caleb Williams had a guy wide open and he opted to make a more difficult pass. So, and that's probably Caleb Williams' worst play of the night, is making that decision that caused the 3-and-out. It's splitting hairs for me. Yes, against maybe a more difficult opponent, that could end up being a problem. But like we talked about after the Utah game, you said that you wish that they, ran the ball and killed more clock and tried to play keep away a little bit more. And all I can think of is, like, you've got like burners. This is an offense that has all the firepower in the world. Why are you slowing it down? If you have the ability to make this a track meet and throw the ball up and down the field, and defenses are not taking that away from you, and you're able to do that, do it until they stop it.
My counter to that is, it's not like USC has an unsuccessful rushing attack and running the ball would not result in touchdowns, especially in a game like this. Arizona has a miserably bad rush defense. So you could have run the ball, taken more clock out, and gotten the touchdowns that you needed in order to take this game away. I think there's an argument that being explosive lends itself to Big 12 bad kind of games. And if you have a defense that can't get stops,
sure,
and you want your offense to help your defense, then slowing the game down helps your defense. I don't think it's a catch-all. I don't think it necessarily changes the way we feel about this game if that's the way that USC operates in the second half. Because if USC scores their last 3 touchdowns on drives that are more methodical, then the game probably still ends up like more or less in the area that we're in. There aren't a ton of drives that USC doesn't. Well, let's see. Let's go through. Okay.
Well, to go back to the chat. Dave says the number of yards isn't the point, Michael. It's controlling the game. SC was controlling the game in the third quarter with Caleb Williams going up and down the field with the passing game.
But at the same time,
the game isn't just about running. And
yes, but in the second half, when your drives, your first 4 drives of the second half are 1 minute, 1 minute 35 seconds, 12 seconds, and 1 minute 10 seconds.
Yes, this is an offense you dream of. But
the
whole point of getting Lincoln Riley is that you would have an offense that was explosive and could do this. And now SC gets it, and we're complaining about it.
You've only scored on 2 of those 4 possessions, and your defense is going back out there after minimal time on the sideline to figure things out, to rest up.
The greatest defense is a good offense.
Yeah, but if you're only scoring 2 touchdowns in those 4 possessions, then would you have been better off just running the ball in those possessions and giving your defense more time on the sideline to figure themselves out, to get their legs underneath them, and to all of that? Like, I get what you're saying, but now you are asking USC to live and die on 45 to 37 games. And I think what we're seeing from the chat and from everybody else is like, do we want to see USC living and dying in 45 to 37 games? I agree with Dave and OC, though.
So you
in that the offense is not the thing to complain about. The offense is fine. The offense won the game. But if people want to talk about solutions for the defense, there are very few solutions, and one of them is slow down your offense to benefit your defense. That is a potential solution. But but is it the best solution? I don't know. Lincoln Riley probably would say, well, we'd rather put up 50 points, and if that's what he decides, then that's what he decides. But like, it is a valid option to pursue if you need to have your offense help your defense a little bit more.
I just think if we're talking about that, you want to slow things down to put the pressure, take the pressure off your defense. My thought is, if you have the ability to have an offense that's this good, and I'm just going to straight out say it, SC has the best quarterback play they've ever had in the history of the school. Literally. This is the best quarterback play we've ever seen in Cardinal and Gold.
But you're also talking about you don't need Caleb Williams to score 5 touchdowns in this game if you hand the ball off to Travis Dye.
The pressure you are putting on them is greater than the pressure that you're putting on your own defense.
Yeah, but that's why you end up in 45 to 37 games.
Who cares? This is what college football is.
Because people are asking about how to fix the defense.
There's a reason Alabama gives up these points all the time, too.
But Alabama loses games now because they give up 37 points. People are asking how to fix the defense. They still
win the national championship every other year.
Then just say that you're fine with a 45 to 37 Big 12 bad outcome.
I am.
Which is fine. But like, that's your side, and I'm pointing out that there's an entirely different side that would rather not have 45 to 37 outcomes, and that would sacrifice the explosiveness of this offense for potentially helping the defense by running the ball more, especially against a defense that was never going to stop USC on the ground. I mean, I get you, but like, I don't know why there's like this. It's like
there's unrest in the chat about me saying that Caleb Williams is playing at the highest level. I get it. This is, like I've said before, this is not about like Caleb Williams is better than Matt Leinart. It's more so like the offenses Matt Leinart wasn't running this offense. If he was running this offense, he'd be considerably better now than he was then.
He wouldn't be good in this offense.
Oh no, I agree.
Not in this
Sure,
offense asked something
yes.
different of a quarterback than Matt Leinart.
But
did.
also, like,
But
he would be
Caleb-
different everything would be different.
If you put Caleb Williams on the 2005 offense, you don't think Caleb Williams would be absolutely incredible?
Well, yes, but what I'm saying is the offenses are just completely.
Yeah,
the offenses are
different.
catered to help the player more than ever. We talk about how, you know, Carson Palmer was this incredible quarterback at SC, and he was. His numbers don't look like anything compared to Caleb Williams. And that's because offenses these days are designed to be significantly more efficient because we've learned, we've evolved as human beings to craft an offense that is more statistically viable to work.
And
that's how the game is evolved.
And we've evolved the
so that's why I'm saying the quarterback play itself from Caleb Williams is the best SC has ever had in the school.
I would agree.
I think we can argue about whether Caleb Williams himself is the best quarterback SC has ever had, and that's going to be up for debate. He's only played 8 games. I'm not going to put my sword on that hill. I'm talking about the quarterback. In terms of
quarterback performances,
yes,
this is why it's pointless to compare somebody who played in the 1940s with someone who plays currently, because like Caleb Williams is a completely different monster. Like, we didn't have quarterbacks like the closest we had as far as quarterbacks like Caleb Williams, the closest we had was someone like Vince Young, who was great, but Caleb Williams is a better passer than Vince Young. Caleb Williams is the athleticism of a mobile quarterback with the calm, cool, collected nature of a guy like Matt Leinart, which is what made Matt Leinart great. Like, it's not fair to compare the modern quarterback to the great quarterback who achieved all those things 20 years ago. Like, it's just not fair. The quarterbacks now are bred different and are better.
They spend their entire childhoods going to quarterback camps.
Yes. Well, and this is always my argument of, like, you take guys who played football in the 80s and put them in the modern athletics training and stuff. Yes, maybe they could live up to what we have, but like, there was no one in the 80s who compares to what DK Metcalf is, like, as a specimen. So, like, it's not fair to do those comparisons because the modern athlete is evolved. And
can you imagine Alex Ovechkin playing hockey in the 30s?
It wouldn't have been fair. It would not have been fair. Caleb Williams playing quarterback in the 80s with the modern upbringing that he's had, if you took a time machine and put him back there in the 70s or whatever, he would be a god. Like, it would just not compare because modern sports performance science is just not even the same thing. But I do want to talk about something else. Huge shout out. We've talked about the way that the wide receivers stepped up, and, Taj Washington and Kyle Ford both come away with 100-yard performances, which is great for each of them. Taj getting his opportunity, Kyle Ford coming back from all his injuries and still being able to perform like this and come up with his moment. We haven't really talked about the offensive line, though, because we came into this game finding out all of a sudden that Andrew Voorhees would not play. And that was something that really concerned me going into this game. That was not good. Now, Arizona's defense, not exactly the one that's going to challenge your offensive front. Well, but you were shuffling.
Really quick, we got a question from John that said, couldn't watch the game. How'd the O-line do without Voorhees? So I think this is a good opportunity for you to continue to go on this.
Put the preface of Arizona's defensive line, defensive front, not good at all, buddy.
Yeah.
But I've seen not good defensive line still cause trouble for USC, and the offensive line had zero problems. The offensive line got shuffled around. Mason Murphy.
It's the best they looked all year.
Mason Murphy got plugged in there. Yeah. Guys got shifted around. Didn't have a single problem. They ran the ball well. They protected Caleb Williams. They gave him hours to throw at times.
The only times he was getting out of the pocket was when you had 8 seconds in the pocket, and at that point it's a free for all anyway. So you got the scatter drill at that point. So he got plenty of time.
Oh, he got tons and tons of time, and that's part of what contributed to how effective USC's offense was in this game. Mm-hmm. The only real downsides for the offensive line was like a holding penalty on Mason Murphy that took away a first down conversion, I think. So all in all, I thought the offensive line responded very well to that injury. That's very good to see that Mason Murphy could come in and take care of business. Obviously, you want Andrew Voorhees back ASAP because against better defensive fronts, that will be a problem. But you're seeing them dig more into the offensive line depth and not have it be a disaster. And that's a very good thing, not just for this season, but for next season, because next season you're losing a lot of these senior guys. And you're going to have to be replacing a lot of them. And we don't know necessarily where those replacements are going to come from. And Mason Murphy is now starting to look like one of those guys. You know, we already know that you can rely on Jonah Monheim and Cortland Ford looks like he can be there, but there's gaps that are going to need to be filled. And Mason Murphy getting playing time is a very good thing ultimately for USC's offensive line going forward.
He did have a really key penalty. It took a touchdown off the board.
Which was a shame because it was a great touchdown. It was fun. Yeah,
and it was a great play by Caleb Williams, and that's I think it was Shotgun that tweeted it out that he after rewatching it just looks like a learning experience about a play in which that was an effort thing, and you're gonna get better from that.
So better to have that happen against Arizona.
Yes, than UCLA. But you know, we talk about the offense, and I think part of the issues on offense tonight, the only issues on offense tonight were the points that were left on the board. And I don't just blame the offense on that. There were 2 missed field goals. One of those missed field goals was a long one, a 56-yarder, which should never have been attempted. It was I don't have it in front of me, but it was like a 4th and 12, I want to say. SC had a 4th and something like that. It was a 4th and long at about the 40 or so yard line. Just what are we doing? If you're going to kick a 56-yard field goal, that means you don't care about the possession, the field position. So just go for it. I trust Caleb Williams to pick up a 4th and 12 or whatever versus any college kicker kicking a 56-yard field goal. And that's not to say I don't trust, Lynch or anything like that. Like, it has nothing to do with that part. You just go for it on 4th down. Don't overthink it at that point or punt. So that was one area where I think SC left some on the board that maybe could have been a little bit weird.
Lynch hasn't earned that attempt yet. Does that make sense? Like,
maybe at the end of a half, if you want to just throw out, or if it's like a desperation final drive of the game kind of thing, sure. That's a.
If you're choosing between that and a Hail Mary, maybe you take that kick knowing Dennis Lynch does have range.
Sure, yeah.
But like I said, I don't think that Lynch has earned that yet. He's a young guy. It's exciting. He's got great personality and everything like that, but he's not been reliable as a kicker yet for USC. So don't have him go out and try to kick that kick when you don't know that you can rely on him. I would rather have the ball in Caleb Williams' hands. Or I would rather have Aiden Sleep-Dalton pin Arizona. But in this case, and you know me, I'm a very conservative, like always take the points, always do this. In that case.
Not from 56.
No, exactly. But relative to, like, there are 3 options there, right? You attempt the kick, you punt, or you put the ball in Caleb Williams' hands. What we saw from USC's offense in this game, I would have just rather had the ball in Caleb Williams' hand. I think there was a 4th down attempt that Arizona attempted and I think this applies to what Utah did too, is like the way you were moving the ball. I was sort of looking at it going like, yeah, of course they should go for that 4th down. Oh, it got pushed back because of a penalty or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, the whole reason they didn't go for one of the 2-point conversions was that way too. But I asked a question in the chat here. Who are your 3 stars of the night? And before we get yours and mine, let's run down some from the chat. The Wheeler Dealer says Bryson Shaw, Kyle Ford, and Caleb Williams. GLBC says Caleb Ford and Coach Henson. Dave the Greater, Caleb, Travis Dye, and Ford. Then we got Caleb, Taj Washington, and Travis Dye from NG's Raiders. Ross H. says, Ross H. Why can I not read today? Ford, Caleb, and a well-done steak on my barbecue. Marksman,
I hope that well-done
NYC.
steak was a medium, though.
Medium rare,
Yeah.
perhaps. Yeah. It says Caleb Ford and Blackman. Dave S says hockey stars: Caleb Williams, Taj Washington, Kyle Ford. What were your 3 stars? Because I think for me it has to be number 1 stars Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
straight away. The 2s and 3s, I think it gets interesting where you go. If you're only picking SC players, realistically, Jaden Delara is number 2.
Yeah,
but like realistically, we're only talking about SC guys. Who's your 2 and 3?
I think it's Caleb Williams, Taj Washington, Kyle Ford. I get why people are picking Bryson Shaw. I get it. That interception was big for sure. But
seven tackles tonight.
Yeah. To me, this game was all about what USC was able to do without Jordan Addison, without Mario Williams.
Yes.
And I thought that Caleb Williams was just absolutely outstanding. And Taj Washington came to play and Kyle Ford came to play, and they really lifted the offense up on a night when the offense could have run into trouble with knowing that they didn't have their sort of bread and butter guys. I'd give an honorable mention to Travis Dye, especially because he closed out the game the way that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, honorable mention to Bryson Shaw and I saw some for Max Williams. I don't want to give it to anybody on the defense.
Brendan Rice could have gotten some competition there if it wasn't for the drops.
Yeah, just those drops.
Five catches, 62 yards. I think he contributed well, but
that's the difference.
He had the most number of targets, but did not have the most number of catches, and that was because of the dropsies.
That's the difference between Brendan Rice being here and joining Jordan Addison and Mario Williams up here.
Oh, yeah. I thought tonight kind of cemented that Taj Washington's the number 3.
I think so. When USC needed him, he was there. He caught everything that came his way. He had a ton of yak yards, scored touchdowns. I don't know what more you could really ask for from him.
Ross says Ford moving up the wide receiver depth chart now, blocks too well. Yeah, I could see Kyle Ford doing that. At this point, SC has a good problem to have is all these different receivers, because I really like what Michael Jackson III does.
Me too. I love it.
I love his skill set a lot. And I think, Terrell Bynum plays a key role, and, Hudson, deserves a spot to be in this rotation too. So it's hard to have all of these guys there. But I don't know how you don't end up leaving this game thinking that Kyle Ford needs to be more a part of this offense. 100%.
It's so difficult, though, because when Jordan Addison and Mario Williams are back, then it's Kyle Ford and Taj Washington fighting for scraps with Brendan Rice.
Who does he take away reps from? It's probably Brendan Rice.
But the problem is that Kyle Ford catches the ball better than Brendan Rice, but Brendan Rice, it seems like they're more interested in having him involved in the offense overall. And maybe that's just because Kyle Ford is still, working his way back from multiple major knee injuries. I don't know.
We can't keep talking about that forever, though, right?
It's a lot, though.
We're not talking about that with Max Williams.
I would still talk about that with Max. I don't think I'm judging Max Williams as harshly as I would not knowing that he wasn't coming back from
but he's not being slowly
slow gamed.
Yeah, like he's in there full bore. He led SC in tackles tonight. He had 3 solo tackles, 9 all told. He had a half tackle for loss and a pass breakup for Max Williams.
He almost had the longest sack in the history of sacks, and I was very disappointed that he let Delara get away from him the third time he had a chance at him, because that would have been really fun. But no, I think the nice thing about this offense is, as much as we want to talk about like who's the number 3 receiver, you're very much, or 3 or 4, you're very much in a scenario where the 3 or 4 receiver is whoever comes to play that night. So it's Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, and everybody else. You can't. I mean, Kyron Hudson has got two catches for 26 yards. Every time Kyron Hudson comes up for a catch, it's a big one. He doesn't get very many opportunities, but he's there for it. We both like Michael Jackson III. All of those guys, they can be there whenever they need to be there. And I think that the pecking order, there is no pecking order once you get down beyond the first 2 guys. It's just who's going to go out there and make the play. And I think Kyle Ford has proven himself to Caleb Williams that if he's on the field, he's going to make the play.
Yeah, I loved the long 70-yard pass play. Excellent
beautiful
execution from Caleb Williams on the little feather. and the little rope-a-dope from Kyle Ford to fake the block and then just go out there and catch the ball with the big gain. If he's a little bit faster, he gets into the end zone, but he doesn't need to be that fast when he's that skilled as a pass catcher and a target in the passing game. Glenn says, given tonight's special teams performance, should we still hire a special teams coach for next year?
As we've said on previous episodes, USC had special teams mishaps and blunders with a special teams coach. So
here's my issue with talking about the special teams issues from tonight. There were two big special teams mistakes. I don't think they are solved with the special teams coach. The issues tonight was the decision to have the sneak onside kick,
which was a decision.
It didn't work. But
wasn't poorly executed. That
was a decision.
Yeah.
If SC gets that, everyone raves about it, right? Like the problem, if anything, there is the decision to go for that.
Yeah.
And if you're critical of that, then it really has nothing to do with whether or not there is a coach there. That comes from the head coach.
Yeah.
Number two is the punt from Aiden Sleep-Dalton that looked like it was tipped, but when they showed the replay, it didn't look like it was tipped from that close. I don't know. It wasn't a great punt. Again, that's just one punt. I don't know if a special teams coach fixes one punt from a punter. Usually the things that I'm talking about with special teams coaches are long returns or a poor decision on a return game. I did think that Michael Jackson III had a questionable return, and he was pretty deep. Probably should have just fair caught it or let the ball go on a punt, but he had a nice little nifty return of 10 yards that looked pretty good. So I don't know. I don't think that tonight was the most indicative of SC needing a special teams coach. You agree?
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't seem to make enough of a difference to me to have the special teams coach, especially when there are so many other things that this staff needs to get in order. Like, to get a special teams coach, you need to lose a position coach from somewhere else. And where am I going to take that position coach from? I don't think there's a special teams coach that's good enough to justify that. That's surefire enough.
John Baxter, best in the history of sports.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And Glenn says punting has been suspect this year. Yeah, I'm kind of not surprised though, because USC brought in a punter who had never put on an American football uniform before he got to USC. Like, they shared that anecdote on the broadcast, and like
that's the norm for all the Australian guys.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
that's not a problem. All the good punters in the country are Australian. That's the same for all those guys.
But should we be surprised that said Australian punter is having some growing pains in his first involvement in college football season? I don't think that's a surprise. I think he'll get better as he goes along. We saw that from a boy whose name Ben Griffiths.
I do wonder. I'm curious if the stats bear this out. If you are a Aussie rules punter who, and I don't think Aiden Sleep-Dalton is one of the guys. He's young. I don't think he's one of the guys who played professionally, right?
He's not like a 28-year-old or anything.
Yeah. I wonder, do the guys who did play professionally, like Ben Griffiths played professionally in the AFL or whatever it's called, right? Are those guys more likely to have success in year one because they've played on a big stage before?
Ben Griffiths had issues in year one at USC.
He talked about that.
He talked about how it was punting in a stadium with the lights and the crowd and everything was different. It felt different. Like, this is just a reality. And this is, I think, one of the issues that USC has with the special teams in general. Who are USC special teamers? They have a freshman kicker and a freshman punter. Like, yeah, it's not perfect. I don't think it's break glass stuff yet.
The other thing, a special teams coach is not giving, like, all the punters and the kickers in the offseason, they go to their kicking camps.
Yeah.
Like, they're not spending the special teams coach isn't going over techniques on how the kickers and punters work. So
I guess they're setting up the blocking and all that kind of stuff.
The special teams coaches is all about the return game and all that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah.
They're not. John Baxter wasn't out there like talking about form with the punter. You know what I mean? Like that's not what they're learning all those things in camp.
But they do emphasize different things. Like we did hear from kickers and punters under Baxter that he emphasized hang time more than anything else. So like it wasn't about distance, it was hang time. So like there is that element, but I don't know that there's anything that you couldn't get from just one of your position coaches running the show. It's just not enough of a game changer. USC had a special teams coach for a long time and all we did was complain about him. So
let's go to a question from Pontrocam. It says, how does it feel being this far into the season and likely being 9-1 before USC heads into the UCLA game?
It feels great, doesn't it? It feels great to be 9-1 and to be able to have these conversations where we are
about they don't run
about whether or not 45 points on offense, like whether or not USC should change their offense, like all that kind of stuff. I think it's nice that USC is in these conversations. I still think USC is a work in progress. I want people to not get ahead of themselves about what their expectations for this season are or will be or can be or should be. But it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be 9-1.
Now, I don't foresee a way in which this can be like a failure, honestly.
I can, but I don't think they're plausible outcomes. So
we're in the worst case scenario. Is
just
SC going 9-3?
Just don't. But again, record wise, I think.
I think people would be disappointed by that, but I don't think they should.
But
and I don't expect that to happen either.
What we've talked about too is like 9-3 matters a lot less than how you got to 9-3. So like, do I think that there's a scenario where USC gets blown out by Notre Dame or UCLA and falls to 9-3? I don't think so. Like, I think if USC ends up being 9-3, they lose to Notre Dame and UCLA in 45 to 37 shootouts that are just the way they go. So I think I feel really good. And I think that I feel really excited for the future because it's up from here. It really is going up from here.
Absolutely. It's crazy to think that Caleb Williams is this good so far and he's still got another year.
Yeah. Like, I know the defense is bad too. Like, I know that it's very frustrating to watch this defense, but like, in every measure, this defense is better than they were last year. Just like remember that. Like this defense is a vast improvement from what they were. So like,
they're going to continue to get better on both sides of the ball for sure. Ryan says, is our strength of schedule hiding a lot of our flaws? Only one ranked team, and it is our loss. I don't think so. I mean, if SC would have played. Say this was an odd numbered year, and they would have played Notre Dame already, and maybe they would have had a road game at Oregon already. Yeah, maybe they have two losses there, or one more loss, or whatever it is. But again, going back to the eye test thing, I don't know if the eye test changes, especially considering that SC's toughest road game was the game in which the offense looked the best last week against Utah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, SC's offense looked better tonight than the Utah game, but
that's,
different. Arizona's offense, defense looks like a cheese grater. Yeah. Like the side with the big holes.
Yeah.
So, let's go to another question from Ryan. Do you think USC's refusal to lean on the run? We talked about that earlier. Big T37 says, can we all admit Rajon Davis will not be on this team next year? How does he not get any snaps? Love Nomura, but he's just not a linebacker for heavy snaps. He was getting burned all night. I'm not going to sit here and say that we know that about Rajon Davis. I think it's difficult to predict a transfer like that. I think those things are always uncomfortable to talk about because we are not clued in to all the decision making of why someone isn't getting reps, what all the reasons that go on into those decisions, all the things that are happening on and off the field. There's a lot that goes into it. yes, I think that in a perfect world, given where he was as a recruit, you'd like to say that he was the guy leading USC's linebacker core when Eric Gentry goes down. But is that indicative of a future transfer? I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, it's too hard to say as far as the transfer goes. I do think that you can read something into Rajon Davis not getting time in this game, though. I think that that's not a good sign for where he is in the pecking order. I think it's not a good sign that very clearly they didn't really have anybody under Tuasivi Nomura that they were willing to trust, because we didn't see any of them in this game. We only saw Tuasivi Nomura, we only saw Shane Lee, and we only saw different formations that made up for the fact that they only had those two guys. So if Rajon Davis was a viable choice in this game, he would have played in this game. The fact that he's not means he's not a viable choice for even these kinds of games. That makes it less likely that we'll even see him against a Colorado or a Cal, which if he doesn't play against Colorado or Cal, he's not playing this season at all. You look at someone like Chris Thompson, like Carson Tabarachi, Garrison Madden, those guys, like they're clearly not trusted. Taylor Katoa, they're not trusted. And I would prefer them to be trusted. I would prefer them to have earned a level of trust to have played in this game. I don't know why they aren't trusted. I don't know if I don't know if the coaching staff is just being overly conservative about who they're going to trust. I don't know. I don't know how where the decisions are being made, but I do think it's concerning that those guys haven't gotten that opportunity, that chance. And that may have consequences, and that may involve the transfer portal. It may not. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to see how that goes. Still plenty of time this season. 4 more games remain on the docket, all in November. We'll see if he's able to get on the field a little bit more that way. SJ says, question of what is the play of the game? I say the Taj touchdown. Which one? There were 2.
The play of the game might have been the touchdown that was pulled back because of the hole.
I think for me it was the pass to Brendan Davis in the back of the end zone. The one where they fake the end around, and then Caleb turns around and then throws on his back foot and throws like a 102-mile-an-hour sinker right to Brendan Rice in the back of the end zone, and he toe taps.
Yeah, that was sweet.
That was insane.
Was it one of the Kyle Ford? Sorry, not Kyle Ford. Taj Washington ones, the one where Caleb Williams stood in and took a hit and got the penalty. That the 47-yarder.
Yes, I think so. That was the 47-yarder to Taj too.
Felt like the play of the game, but it's hard because
there were a bunch of insane plays. Realistically, Dorian Singer's first touchdown of the game.
I mean, that is the correct answer, because I still don't know how he made that catch. That is one of the best catches I've ever seen in my life. Like, that thing was incredible. USC had the great problem of there were too many really, really good plays that they all sort of blend together, where like that one was a freaking amazing play that I'm going to remember, even though I don't remember any of the other catches from USC in this game.
Yeah, let's go back to list of questions we've got here. Dave the Greater says, what is your prediction for the playoff ranking coming out next week? What do you got? It was a big week for the big teams. Ohio State, big win on the road at Penn State.
I think the real question is, will the playoff committee reward Tennessee in a way that the AP voters haven't and give them the number 1 ranking? I think there's an argument for it. But none of that really matters because Georgia and Tennessee are playing anyways. So from a USC perspective, I think USC maybe top 10. The hard thing is like who gets ranked in front of them. I don't know that this game helps USC very much in terms of the standings as the college football playoff puts them forward. But there are only so many 6-1 teams, so. I mean, maybe UCLA is in front of USC, Oregon probably will be. Oklahoma State's not there anymore. Wake Forest not there anymore. So will Penn State be ahead of USC? I don't know that I would have Penn State in front of USC, but they played.
No, they're not going to move a 2-loss team.
Oh yeah, Penn State just lost, right? So they're 2 loss. Yeah. So there's only so many teams that can that could go ahead of USC, and none of them really stand out. So USC will probably be right around where they are in the current polls.
I think it'll be pretty true to form with the polls. I wouldn't be surprised if. It's difficult. I feel like the top 3. I've talked about Georgia and Ohio State playing a different sports. Tennessee, I think, is getting very close to getting into that tier for me. I think Kentucky's a good team. Beating them 44-6 is Tennessee just keeps going here, and yeah, I don't know. We're gonna see how that game is with Tennessee, which is at Georgia next week. Yeah, so that's going to be huge. I wouldn't be surprised if the playoff committee makes that 1-2 just for the hell of it.
Yeah,
but that means putting Ohio State 3, and Ohio State 3 feels like it's way too low for Ohio State to be 3. I really liked.
If you've watched Ohio State the last 2 weeks, I don't know about.
Did you see them on the road today against Penn State? I was totally fine with what they did.
Yes.
They closed like a top 10 team. Yes, the offense wasn't the juggernaut for the whole 60 minutes.
We're talking about comparing them to Georgia and Tennessee right now. And I would not have
Ohio the top 3 teams. Pick an order, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Personally, I would not have Ohio State ahead of Tennessee.
The question is who's number 4. And the number 4 probably has to be Michigan. And who's number 5? It probably has to be Clemson.
Or 5 and 4. You can flip them around depending on how you feel.
I think TCU is definitely number 6 of those top 6. And from that point on, I think it's it's questionable where you go. I think that all those teams are roughly the same level. I'm glad I don't have a poll because a vote because
especially because
it's
right now, Georgia still hasn't played Tennessee. We'll know a lot more when they play. Michigan hasn't played Ohio State. We'll know a lot more when they play. Like there's just, not enough. And we don't know what USC will look like when they play UCLA or Notre Dame or Oregon if they get there.
Right. Well, I like the idea I like the tier system and grouping teams. Like right now, Georgia and Tennessee should be in the same group because whoever wins out between those two is in.
Yeah.
Whoever loses, if they end up going 11-1 is in. So those 2 teams probably in the playoff, right? Then you got whoever wins between Ohio State and Michigan is in. Whoever loses is going to be interesting because I don't know if they're going to get the guaranteed bid that Georgia Tennessee will get. Like you could have this thing where Georgia and Tennessee and Ohio State, Michigan, the loser gets an automatic bid for just going 11-1. That's possible.
And it really depends on how that game played out, right?
Right. How do those games play out? It's possible that ends up happening. But we don't know because
if Georgia beats Tennessee close and then Georgia goes on to beat Alabama or whoever in the SEC title game.
Right. Are you going to drop Tennessee below Clemson? No. And then if Michigan and Ohio State is close, are you going to drop the loser below Clemson? It's potential that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Depending on what Clemson does. So I don't know. I mean, the way the playoff committee has gone, they tend to sort by losses. So my thought is an undefeated Clemson still gets in. I don't know, but we'll see. Either way, the Pac-12 does need some sort of help. The way I look at it, I don't think Oregon, SC, or UCLA has an edge over any of them. I think those 3 teams virtually even in terms of their chances of winning the conference. I guess, if anything, I think SC might have the hardest trip given that the defense is a liability. And I probably feel a little bit more confident about the other 2 teams' defense. But SC, Oregon, and UCLA, if either one of those wins out and they're 12-1 and win the conference, then they're going to be on the doorstep to have a chance to make the playoff, depending on how everything else goes. I don't think it's going to matter that the SC being a brand name is going to get them in more than Oregon would. Like, I don't think that matters.
They'll have to have beaten Oregon. They would
have beaten Oregon, either beaten Oregon or Oregon will have lost to the point where it doesn't matter, right?
It's win the Pac-12, give yourself the opportunity. Personally, I think the best case scenario for USC, win out, win the Pac-12, and get left out of the playoff, go to the Rose Bowl and play whoever loses between Ohio State and Michigan, and not get you don't want Georgia, you don't want Ohio State, you don't want Tennessee, I am really enjoying this USC team. I really have enjoyed this season. I don't want to see what happens when this USC team faces one of those teams. Quite frankly, I don't.
Can I be completely honest? I agree with the idea that a playoff blowout loss, that you would take a Rose Bowl appearance over a playoff blowout loss. I agree with that sentiment in terms of how things feel good. But I think in year one, just getting in the playoff, it does not matter what happens. It does not matter what happens. If you got to the playoff in year one, that is such an accomplishment. You're playing with house money. Who cares? You can lose 62-0. It does not matter.
I just don't want to lose 62-0.
Number two, the flip side of this is SC hasn't even been in the playoff. SC's been to many a Rose Bowl. If you just the first time you get to the playoff again, if you lose big, you at least made it.
I guess the plus side is if you go to the playoff in year one and lose big, you just get to say, "Hey, we didn't think we were going to get to the playoff in year one, anyways." So
right, realistically, SC being in the top 10 in the end of year one is house money as it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would certainly not turn down a playoff bid if USC ran the table, won the Pac-12, and was in that position. I would not turn it down at all. I would love it.
Kyle in chat says you should have the attitude of CJ Stroud. I'm not satisfied with 11-2 and a Rose Bowl victory. Yes.
Yeah, but you use that to propel you for the next season.
Yes,
that's the whole point.
I agree. The flip side of that is in year one, after a year that we went 4-8. Then absolutely you should feel satisfied with the Rose Bowl victory if you're 11-2. Absolutely. Mind you, a lot of stuff has to happen for SC to even get there. SC's got to still finish off the year and all of that still. Let's go to a question from Ricky D. Way off topic. Have you seen the video showing the Michigan State players ganging up on a Michigan player in the tunnel? Did you see this?
I looked it up when he sent in that question, and yikes, big yikes. When he says ganging up on a Michigan player in the tunnel, he is not kidding about the crowd of 5, 6, or 7 Michigan State players who are literally wailing on a Michigan player who is on the floor in the tunnel.
All right, hold on. I'm pulling up the video.
It's a yikes.
It looks like Michigan State players jumping up and down, and then randomly
there's a Michigan player in between them getting thrown around by those Michigan players and thrown to the floor.
If you're joining us on YouTube, I'm going to send you the link.
I don't know why, how, or what the heck happened there.
And there's a random dude. Is it a Michigan coach who's just and then one random dude filming it too? I don't know what's going on.
I don't. Stuff's happening in the tunnels involving Michigan teams in Michigan. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, we did get a question from Eric. We talked about this at the end of the preview pod. He says, don't forget before you sign off for tonight, curious how in-game meal choices are decided. Was the choice influenced because we played Arizona, or was it all mood? Okay, so Eric, here's the question. Are you talking about us or the team?
I think he's talking about
us, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me answer the team thing really quick. The team thing ends up being, so SC would always have, this is not an in-game meal, I guess a post-game meal. So yes, you're talking about us. But The post-game meal for the longest time used to be Qdoba at the Coliseum.
It smells so good.
And it would smell so good right outside the locker room. It was incredible. It was so good. And it was like a tease to the media. You'd be standing there, you're like, what's up? And then they started getting Chick-fil-A. And they would have Chick-fil-A delivered all the time. And usually for road games, it would end up being Chick-fil-A too. Like they'd bead the bags, and as the players would walk out, they'd get their game checks and their bag of chicken. Like quite the combo. But how do you want to go back to Eric's question? What decides your in-game meals?
A lot of times we decide beforehand that we're going to go get something. So like a lot of times it's like, we're going to do potato mas, right? Or we're going to do pizza, right? I think today we didn't plan to do anything. So there came a point where it's like, well, what are we going to eat? And then it was like, well, do you want to just do chicken nuggets? So we had chicken nuggets.
Yeah, I was fully planned to go to, we had chicken that was ready to go. And I was planning to usually in-game meals end up being like, we're going to DoorDash something or eat pizza, something like that. And pizza usually is the go-to. This time we had lunch that way. And so for the game, I was gonna make me some nachos, and then I didn't at the last second because I was gonna make me nachos at halftime, and then that whole like referee thing happened, and had to make the YouTube video thing, get the live stream all prepped.
We didn't really talk about the halftime thing, but can we talk about the halftime thing? But more specifically, like, can we just
really quick? I want to go to Malcolm's question in the chat about game check. Yeah, the players get a game check. It's not a game.
It's like a per diem.
It's a per diem. The players get a per diem because for road games, if they are away, the school provides them with an ability to eat or anything, so they get like a per diem. So that's what the game check is.
Yeah.
Not really a game check. I don't know how else to call it.
It's a travel per diem.
Travel
per
voucher.
Yeah, per diem is probably the way to do it.
Yeah.
So the halftime thing, that was atrocious. That was horrendous. That was really, really bad. And it's a good thing that it ultimately didn't have an impact on the outcome of the game, but it could have, and that's really scary. Hold on. Also, can I give a PSA? Let me just get this out real quick. A PSA to USC fans. You make the fan base look bad when you talk about it being a conspiracy against USC, because then John Wilner is on Twitter talking about how USC fans are being crazy about but not talking about the Utah 5 seconds that USC got back on the clock, or about the roughing the passer or unnecessary roughness that Arizona got today. Like, it's not a conspiracy against USC. The Pac-12 refs are just bad and incompetent and terrible at their jobs, and they suck. And they suck for everybody. I watch enough Pac-12 football to know that they suck for everyone. They sucked for the Utah-Washington State game. They were terrible in that game. They're terrible in every Pac-12 game. They just suck. Like, just when you are critiquing the Pac-12 refs, if we all could just keep on tune about the Pac-12 refs suck and USC got screwed over in this instance, instead of the Pac-12 refs are out to get USC. They're not. They're out to get football. Like, that's who they're out to get. Like, they're out to get clean football.
The late hit that was called on Arizona that ultimately
it's a weak call.
Took away what would have been a field goal.
Yeah.
SC would have had to settle and turn it into
a touchdown.
Potentially could have factored in this game bigly. Could have factored bigly if Arizona was scored on that last drive. Then that could have been maybe for the win instead of the tie for the Wildcats, but it wasn't. But like, that to me is prototypical Pac-12 refs.
Yes.
So when you and I are watching the game, I know you think I'm a crazy person. Because
you're a crazy person, but I get why you're a crazy person.
Anytime like Jaden Millar is running towards the sideline, like, don't touch him, don't even touch him. And you get anywhere close, and like my body winces.
In pileups, when somebody then throws a guy later, like as the whistle is blowing or whatever, I hold my breath every time.
And I'm like, no. And it's not because I think those things should be penalties. It's because I expect the worst out of the refs at all times. And when you expect that they're going to call literally anything, that's what that is. That's what that is. And that's what the Pac-12 refs tend to do, is call literally everything. Or in that moment before the half. My issue about the moment before the half where they can't get the snap down. Two things. First of all, the guy operating the clock is an Arizona like employee or whatever, right? Like that guy works at the stadium. Now, I'm not saying that he rigged the system. No, the problem, the clock operator makes mistakes all the time. Some of it is them, a hometown clock, sure, but some of it just happens, human error, whatever. That whole thing happens fine. The way it happened in the moment, I don't have an issue with. That's a hard thing. There's a lot of humans putting it all together, whatever. The problem is that they never reviewed it. They review everything. They review the seconds, the Utah game, where, again, they found out that the clock operator and the referees couldn't work in tandem together. They reviewed that. They review everything in this conference. But they didn't review the one before the half. And
it's such an obvious review.
If there's some sort of technicality on why they couldn't review it, A, why wasn't that told to us? And secondly, what? Like, I understand people make mistakes. But how do you literally have review to make sure that you correct your mistakes? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Outrageous. It's simple. It's really, really simple in that situation. Just go review the clock, determine that there was 6 seconds on the clock when USC had that completion, and then have the clock start on the referee's signal, which is how the thing is supposed to happen anyways. But you didn't have the clock start, but like it's a technical error. Just fix it. This is why you can go back and fix it. Like it's so dumb.
Yeah.
So dumb, so frustrating. Typical Pac-12 refs. Like this is just what we're used to. Like, and this is the difference that like people talk about how like refs in the Big Ten are bad too. They are bad too. Refs in the SEC are bad too. The difference is that like the refs in those conferences don't seem to get the technical basic crap wrong as often as the Pac-12 does.
Or at least not as like flamboyantly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just out there in the open, like put a beacon on it. Like here we are making a bad mistake. Like, yeah.
This
yeah. Ulau says in the chat, how do you guys think the USC's young DB group held up against a very talented group of wide receivers? I thought the corners were good tonight. Sierra Wright had a penalty.
Getting a little
we didn't see much of Mekhi Blackman. I tend to think that that's a good thing with a cornerback. I thought that they kept the receivers in check for most part of this game, except for when they didn't, or except for when the receivers were draped, had guys draped all over them and made insane catches.
Yeah.
The problems for me was when the plays broke down, and then you had guys doing the scramble drill and then coming open. Then suddenly you have McMillan wide open down the sideline. It's like, well, where was he? And why didn't Jaden Delara see him earlier then? Scramble drill stuff, that stuff is super hard to defend. That was part of the issue. And the other issue is I think the corners do their job more often than not. It's the safeties, and when you get in the safeties and linebackers in coverage that can be a little bit vulnerable for SC. But there was a play in the late there in the second half where Kalen Bullock nearly has the interception where he and Jacoby Covington
nearly has the interception. Yeah. Bullock breaks it up.
Yeah, and like they hit each other. Like that was rough moment. Looks like both those guys were banged up at first. Bullock ultimately came back, but
yeah, like you, I think the corners are doing fine. I think there were some bad breaks in this game, just some incredible catches that you just have to credit the opposing team for. They could obviously be better. I think that the entire defense from top to bottom is a work in progress. That's what I'll say. But in terms of the work that needs to be done to fix the defense, the corners are not my biggest concern right now.
Yeah. Ron says in the chat that it was apparent that SC missed Gentry in the middle, and I have a new appreciation for the guy. Yeah, absolutely. SC missed him. They'll be hoping to get him back next week to play Cal as well. So we'll see what happens there. We will be back on Monday to talk more about the Arizona game. And then, of course, Wednesday, leading into homecoming, USC homecoming against Cal next week, followed by a short week, a Friday, to less than 2 weeks from 13 days from now against Colorado as well. So join us then. We want to thank you guys for joining us here in the chat here on YouTube. If you've watched us this far, be sure to like the stream and subscribe if you're not subscribed. Helps grow the channel. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, of course, you can review us there. Our email address is reignoftroy@fanside.com. We'll be back Monday to talk more. Leave us your comments or send us an email. We'll have those prepped for the mailbag as well. Alicia, you got any final thoughts here in the Carcast?
On to the next one.
All right. You heard it. We will see you guys.
Final
says, who wins the Mexican Grand Prix? You got to go check her.
We're Sergio Perez fans right now.
Yeah. Got to go check her. Orale Checo.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. All right. Until then, see ya.
See ya.
See ya.